What if I told you that in Ferrari, someone secretly manipulated Lewis Hamilton's car just before the most important classification of the year, and was discovered by his own boss? What happened in Monza could be the technical scandal of the year, and nobody is talking enough about this. It all started with a sensation. Hamilton knew that something did not square. The car did not feel the same as the previous day. During Friday's free practices, the British had achieved an admirable synchrony with the SF25. He was patient, methodical, adjusting each braking parameter, aerodynamic balance and power delivery to find the exact point in which he could extract the best of the car. That effort, so characteristic of their way of working, was based on almost scientific confidence with the data. But on Saturday morning, that trust disappeared. The car simply did not behave like 24 hours before. What Hamilton felt on the track did not match the information given by the engineers. A subtle change, almost imperceptible to the viewer, but devastating for a pilot of his caliber. It was then that Frédéric Vasseur, faced with the enigma of why the car had lost stability, ordered a complete internal review. Vasseur is no stranger to crises. Since he assumed Ferrari's command, he had to dismantle old habits, face inefficient structures and consolidate a new leadership core. What he found on this occasion, however, was more serious than a simple operational error. He discovered that during the morning from Friday to Saturday, an internal group known as the Central Performance Group had made unauthorized technical adjustments in Hamilton's car. These changes included a modification of the rear conduction height and the preload of the differential, two critical variables that directly alter the distribution of the weight and the traction of the vehicle. In Monza, a circuit that requires maximum aerodynamic efficiency and braking stability from a very high speed, touching these variables without considering the driving style of the pilot is a chaos sentence. And that was exactly what happened. The perfect balance that Hamilton had found, that feeling so difficult to get in a car as nervous as the SF25, was sabotaged from within. This finding detonated a deep alarm. It was not a poorly communicated technical experiment. It was not a failed update like the many that Vasseur has had to cancel in the past. It was a deliberate intervention, executed without the knowledge of the pilot or the team director. A unilateral act which could only be interpreted in two ways, or as a sample of unforgivable unfortunate within a modern Formula One structure, or as a form of silent technical sabotage. The implication is brutal. Because if a pilot cannot trust his car to remain stable between sessions, how can he compete freely? This is the core of the crisis. A team can overcome strategic errors, boxing failures, even painful defeats. But when distrust is installed within the garage itself, when the hands that build the car begin to act with interests outside the official technical direction, the problem is no longer sports. It is cultural. It is structural. And for Ferrari, who has been trying to redefine his modern identity for years, this type of internal betrayal represents a devastating setback. The most worrying thing for Vasseur was not only what was done, but the moment it was done. In Monza, at home, with the world watching. It is as if someone inside the team had wanted to send a message, or maybe protect a preferred configuration by another pilot. Because yes, SF25 is extremely sensitive to adjustments. And what improves the performance of a driver can completely destabilize the other. But altering the tuning without consensus is not just a bad practice. It is a direct violation of the principle of technical transparency that should govern a team that aspires to win championships. Lewis Hamilton is not simply a fast pilot. He is an emotional engineer on wheels. Each curve, each braking, each acceleration responds to a delicate sensory system that has cultivated for more than 2 decades behind the wheel. For him, each free session is a laboratory opportunity, a millimeter search for balance between technical precision and organic sensation of the car. In Monza, that harmony seemed to be closer than ever. During Friday's training, Hamilton had achieved an unusually rapid adaptation to SF25, a historically volatile and indomitable car. His driving style, meticulously calibrated, had begun to merge with the aggressive car of the car, specially designed for the extreme low Monza load requirements. The key was in the back sensitivity of the car. Hamilton, accustomed to stable and controlled rear tensile, a legacy of his time in Mercedes, had managed to soften the power delivery of the Ferrari through a specific motor mapping combination, brake balance and differential adjustment. The result was a car that finally obeyed. One that allowed the Ascari variant without aggressive corrections, which floated precisely in the parabolic and did not need desperate adjustments in the braking of the first chicana. It was a technical symphony that seemed to announce something big, but everything fell apart in less than 12 hours. The clandestine modifications changing the preload of the differential and the rear conduction height affected two essential pillars in the Hamilton pilot style: the traction and curve output and the longitudinal stability in braking. Monza is a circuit of extremes. It requires stability in abrupt braking after long straight, and a surgical traction at the exit of slow curves such as Raggia or the first variant. Any alteration in these areas of sensitivity completely breaks the balance that a pilot had perfected. And that was exactly what happened. The car began to feel uncontrolled, especially in braking. Small corrections that previously made with subtlety now required additional physical efforts. The rear axle stopped cooperating just at the time of maximum demand. For any other pilot, this might seem a simple car difficult to drive. For Hamilton, who had invested each session in building an almost mathematical confidence with the SF25, it was a mechanical betrayal without explanation. And here the real problem begins. Because when a pilot cannot trust what the car gives him, the loss of confidence moves to all levels. In his ability to make decisions to the limit, in the data provided by the engineers, in the technical team that surrounds him. The human-machine connection is broken. And in modern Formula One, that is synonymous with defeat. It is not enough to be fast. You have to be in total synchrony with the car to beat rivals who have already reached that balance since the first race. Because this is no longer just a technical theme. It is political. It is cultural. And directly affects the leadership that Ferrari intended to consolidate with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton. The signing of the 7-time world champion was not only a sports bet. It was a symbol. A clear signal to paddock that Ferrari was ready to fight seriously again. To stop being the eternal team in reconstruction and recover its place at the top of world motoring. Hamilton, meanwhile, came with the illusion of closing his career with a glorious chapter, leading a historical resurrection. But that plan demands a fundamental thing: unity, mutual commitment, absolute transparency. And what happened in Monza attentive directly against that alliance. Now Hamilton faces a silent dilemma. Not to change equipment is far away, but to redefine his role inside Ferrari. He cannot simply be a pilot who executes. He must become a technical leader, an internal guard, and someone who imposes his criteria with authority. Because when confidence in technical validation systems is lost, the pilot must build his own guarantees. And Hamilton, with his experience, has all the tools to do so. But that demands energy. And that energy, if you are aimed at repairing internal relationships, moves away from the real objective: compete for championships. On the other hand, this incident has lit a warning signal for Charles Leclerc, the other protagonist of the Ferrari project. Because although it was officially declared that alterations only affected Hamilton's car, suspicions have opened cracks. Was a preferred configuration by the Monegasco pilot? Did your performance at the expense of internal balance deliberately favor? Although there is no evidence, the questions exist. And that can tighten the coexistence of a pair that, until now, promised to function in harmony. The internal rivalry in Ferrari has historically been one of its curses. And these types of events are the perfect spark for this story to be repeated. What has happened in Monza cannot be minimized as a simple technical anecdote. We are facing an event that nakes the internal fragility of one of the most important teams in the history of motor racing. The unauthorized alteration of the Lewis Hamilton car not only affected its classification performance, but has exposed a deep division within Ferrari. A symptom that, despite the structural advances promoted by Frédéric Vasseur, the team still lives with dynamics of the past that do not take place in the modern Formula One. And now the questions that float in the air are inevitable. Was it an isolated mistake, or are there internal interests operating under parallel agendas? How will Vasseur respond in the next few days? What real consequences will this episode in Ferrari's organizational culture? And most importantly, can Lewis Hamilton continue to believe that this team is the right place to close its legacy? Because at this level of competition, everything begins and ends in trust. If that trust breaks, even the biggest talent of paddock can be isolated, unprotected, and without tools to compete at the highest level. Monza should be a celebration. Ferrari's spiritual home, the circuit that lights the hearts of the tifosi. But it has become a silent battlefield. Not because of what happened on the track, but for what was discovered outside it. And that hidden conflict has potential to define not only this season, but the next years of the Ferrari-Hamilton project. Because when a team is betrayed from within, the real race begins in the halls, not in the asphalt. Do you think Vasseur can recover total control of the team and eradicate these behaviors? Do you think Hamilton has the necessary time and patience to endure this type of internal blows? Or are we facing the beginning of a silent break that could fracture the project before its fullness reaches? Leave me your opinion.